The ultimate ambition of modern physics is to map the entire universe perfectly from a detached, objective, external vantage point. This is the pursuit of a unified theory of everything, a framework that captures physical reality at its absolute deepest foundational level. But a critical philosophical challenge precedes that project. The scientists attempting to build this complete model exist inside the very system they are trying to explain. We do not observe reality from the outside. The cognitive structures we use to reason and the instruments we use to measure are themselves products generated by the universe. Traditional methodology relies on what is often called the view from nowhere, the assumption that reality can be accurately described without bias by an observer standing completely apart from it. Complete external verification of reality is structurally impossible. The observer is permanently embedded within the environment they seek to map. The search for universal truth is constrained by the immovable structural condition of being inside the system. It is not a temporary gap caused by missing data or inadequate technology. The external universe exists independently of any observer, operating by its own physical laws. But we encounter experienced reality, not a perfect reflection of that raw space. It is generated exclusively through continuous, localized interaction between the environment and the observer. An observer is never truly separate from what they are observing. To exist as a conscious agent is already to be actively engaged with a world. Understanding reality requires examining the complex lens taking the picture, rather than assuming we are looking at a flawless photograph of the universe itself. When discussing the limits of human knowledge, theorists frequently point to formal mathematical boundaries for proof. That requires precise context. Gödel's incompleteness theorems establish hard limits on sufficiently powerful formal axiomatic systems. They are a result about mathematics, not a direct constraint on empirical, continuously updating physical science. Similarly, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle dictates that conjugate physical properties, like position and momentum, cannot simultaneously possess exact values. It is a feature of physical reality, not a general statement about human cognitive limits. As philosophers and systems theorists like Thomas Nagel and Heinz von Forster recognized, the true boundary is topological embeddedness. You face a structural impossibility when trying to map a perimeter from the inside without access to an external vantage point. You cannot verify a description of the whole from within the whole. This global limitation does not prevent accurate local knowledge. General relativity, formulated by minds inside spacetime, predicts gravitational wave behavior to extraordinary precision. Science operates as a progressively refined series of local approximations. It is an evolving model, not a path toward final, absolute global verification. Within this embedded state, consciousness operates in two simultaneous roles. It is both a filter of information and an active participant in reality. This illustrates the neuroscience model of predictive processing. The brain doesn't passively record the world. It generates predictions and constructs reality by resolving errors against incoming signals. This sorting matrix is highly sensitive. Emotional states dictate exactly how external data is filtered. High stress physically restricts perceptual awareness. The system prioritizes immediate threats for survival, discarding broader data and wide pattern recognition. Calm produces the inverse effect. The intake aperture widens, enabling exploratory interpretation and integrating highly complex intertwined data streams. Two people observing the same physical event from different emotional states inhabit different realities, both experientially and in the resolution of the data they process. This embedded condition dictates severe isolation. Every observer operates entirely behind their own filtered coherence boundary, completely blind to the true interior state of any other node. In this specific operational framework, faith is not simply a blind belief. It is the logical, foundational decision to treat another observer's interiority as real, despite the structural impossibility of proving it. Beings cross this gap in different ways. A predatory crossing models another entity with precision exclusively to manipulate, control, or extract data from them. Predation optimizes an individual coherent system at a direct cost, consuming the target's embeddedness to reinforce its own boundaries. Empathic crossing operates by a different structural logic. It registers another node as a perfectly equivalent coherent system to your own. Neuroimaging shows that observing another in pain activates specific affective processing regions in the observer's brain, establishing a measurable biological overlap between self and other. This structural coupling precedes human civilization. It is a deeply embedded evolutionary feature of social cognition, found across multiple mammalian lineages. Because empathy is the only crossing mode that registers the other as a system equivalent to one's own, it is the only mechanism that expands the total field of coherence rather than merely redistributing information through consumption. Observers do not exist in isolated pairs. They operate within massive, overlapping fields of other embedded nodes. For conscious agents, empathic coupling acts structurally like gravity. It is the mechanism drawing independent systems into functional alignment. When observers couple across gaps, they produce a collective coherence field. This higher-order system processes properties far exceeding what single observers generate independently. It upgrades the processing power required to perceive the universe's independent structure, without claiming to create it itself. Collective human consciousness is a literal perceptual instrument required to map a mathematically dense external reality. Since a complete objective view from the outside will always remain structurally out of reach, the meaning of human life cannot be contingent on acquiring absolute certainty. Meaning emerges instead through the intense friction of shared vulnerability, shared suffering, and our active, continuous conscious participation. Because we navigate identical epistemic limits and identical perceptual blindness, practicing empathy becomes structurally and ethically central. Choosing to build relational ties across the void, despite the permanent uncertainty of another's interior state, represents the highest form of operational faith. To live, to suffer, and to actively bridge the observer gap through empathy aligns the conscious agent with the structural reality of their own embeddedness. This shared participation is the most coherent form of truth available to us.